Thank you. Quite an amusing morning for me because I refer to journalists as DJ. However, inevitably, of course, Orwell had the international dimension, not least in Homage to Catalonia, and the savage commentary on colonialism in Burmese days. I think that's a very significant part of his political writing.
As did Dickens in American Notes. But also Burmese days, I mean, all of them seem to be horrible, whether you're white or Burmese. I mean, he seems to be absolutely vile about everybody. I mean, I read that novel thinking there's not a single person in this book who I actually like. But in American Notes, Dickens went to America and wrote a...
You liked the Doctor.
Well, yes, okay, I like the Doctor. But Dickens went to America and he came back and wrote this absolutely stinging indictment of what the Americans called their domestic institution, which was slavery. He was absolutely disgusted by it. He wrote about it. He wrote about America and Martin Chuzzlewit as well. He also lived for a year in Italy. He lived in France. Dickens wasn't just spending his whole life living in London writing. You know, he travelled a great deal. If you've read all of his works, you'd know that he writes a great deal about that.
Dickens' ideal foreign country was Switzerland. Oh. He wanted England to be like Switzerland as regards politics and government.
Cuckoo clock.
No, you've had a turn. Sorry. This gentleman here, please, and gentleman over there to follow, and then the lady in the middle there. And then I'll have to review the time.
One of the problems with this debate, aren't we talking about chalk and cheese? Completely. We're having on one side a so-called cerebral thinker, and on the other side a literary artist. And that, I think, is the essential difference between these two. Orwell, I think, will be memorable in world history for his taking the lid off communism. Remember in Homage to Catalonia, which I think is a very important work, he understood how the Communist Party at the time betrayed their friends, their so-called allies. I have personal experience of this in Yugoslavia, where Tito participants betrayed actively their so-called, no, not so-called, allies. And this, he put his finger on that. He was the first one to do it, and greatly to his credit. Dickens is a great novelist. We're talking in the Balzac, Tolstoy categories here. And I think that is the essential difference. An artist and a thinker. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just say one thing is that he wasn't just a novelist. That's what I hope Michael and I have been trying to get across, that his journalism was enormous. There was so much of it. It's just that, you know, if people aren't, you know, reading, maybe lots of people are reading it today, but he wrote just as many articles as he did novels.
Because we have to point one out, I think it's amazing how little of it people remember.
Yeah.
And that's actually, and I realise that he's slightly further off than Orwell. But the point is that Orwell, actually the truth is Orwell was, you asked this question, is there any one particular reform that you could have associated with Orwell? It is of course entirely the wrong question. Can you look at the world today using what Orwell writes to make really important distinctions and make really important lessons? Yes. Can you do the same with Dickens? No. No, you really can't. Give people a turn.
We have a Big Brother on the television. Let us not forget that.
Orwell and Dickens, of course, were interested in political change, but the thing is that perhaps for significant political change you need three things. You need to have information, empathy and understanding. Now Dickens, it seems to me, was fantastic at making people aware in terms of giving them information about things that deserve empathy, but his way of thinking very much was orientated in the particular rather than the general. And to be a great political writer, you need to have a structuralist bent of mind. And Orwell was capable of making those sort of general analyses of the economic and political situation, such as to bring about significant political change over the medium and long term.
Anybody want to comment on that? Thank you very much for that. The lady here, I promised. And then the gentleman over there, and then, sorry, no more. Is somebody grumbling? I'm really sorry.
Just hidden by the...
Do you know, I really can't see you.
No, I think I'm up.
Yes, you are. Go on, we'll have to go on a bit longer. That lady there as well. Okay. You next.
I'd just like to say that we ought to remember that Dickens was writing in the 19th century when the concept of the novel was different and much more restricted. If you think about the public outrage that there was when Mrs. Gaskell published Ruth, you know, that really caused a great deal of trouble. Dickens avoids that. I mean, the novel that I think about that sometimes makes me a bit cross is Oliver Twist. Oliver Twist is the hero of that novel. He undergoes two horrific experiences that a child should never have to undergo, but he is not affected by them. He is an attractive-looking little boy who can speak very well and who emerges from all of this without any effect on him. At the same time, Dickens has exposed to things that are going on that really shouldn't be going on. Whereas Orwell was writing at a different time and had much more freedom to write and to criticise.
Thank you very much. Gentleman over there.
As an Orwell fan, and as someone who arrived here today without any doubt that Orwell was the better political writer, I'd like, if I may, to make a point on behalf of Dickens. It strikes me that we're not really comparing like with like here, that in a sense Orwell has started at high speed here compared with Dickens. As a political writer, the party politics were in existence. The Labour Party had been formed. The Russian Revolution had happened. He was able to become a political writer far more easily, I would have thought, than Dickens. When Dickens was writing in the 1840s and 50s, there was no real party politics. The Whigs and the Tories were arguing about all sorts of things, but I don't really think either of them were particularly concerned about the dispossessed people in society. And I think from a political point of view, the fact that Dickens, through his novels and through the excellent way that he wrote, was able to bring these poor people to all sorts of people's attention who perhaps could influence political debate and the formation of political parties in the future. I'm now thinking that perhaps from a political point of view, Dickens may have made more of a contribution than Orwell and may perhaps be the better political.
That's the vote we want.
I disagree profoundly with that. The lady in the audience and I, they were kind of nodding at each other. In fact, you talk about Orwell hitting the ground running. In fact, Orwell took 10 years to formulate any kind of political position at all, really. And his early novels, his first 4 novels in the journalism he wrote in the 1930s, is very Dickensian in that it's issue-based, and he will find a particular thing that he dislikes and attack it. So he will attack squalid lodging houses in the Road to Wigan Pier. He will attack fourth-rate private schools, as the gentleman pointed out in A Clergyman's Daughter. That it took the experience of going to Spain, where he thought that for the first time he had seen practical socialism in action. It took that to make him really sit down and formulate, if you like, a concept by what he thought the major issues, not only of England, but of the world, could be addressed. And so I think that is actually a false distinction, that hitting the ground running one, and that it took him a very long time and some very serious thought and some bitter personal experience before he could come to that position.